Welcome back, friends, and let's continue with our project. In this video, we are going to cover user dashboard, and we want to create a table here to show all the users' listings. So let's open our project, and we want to go to our dashboard controller in controllers folder. So the first step is to grab the authenticated users listings. And for that, I'm going to accept the request so I can grab the authenticated user using this object. And then in this function, I'm going to create a listings variable, and I will set this to request user, which will give me the authenticated user. And then I want to grab this user's listings. So I can use the listings function, which is the function we created in the user's model. And if we open the user model, just to take a look at it, here is the function. So because of this function, which is a relationship between our models, we are able to call this function of the authenticated user, which will give us this user's listings. So let's get all these listings, and then we will send them as a prop to our component. So as a second argument in this render function, you want to create a listings and set this to the variable we just created. Then we want to open our dashboard component and accept our props. So we can say define props and say we are expecting a listings, which is going to be type object. Then I just want to log that into the console to see what we are working with. So let's go back to our website and open the console and give it a reload. So we get our object, and if we take a look at the target, we have an array, and within that we have one object because this user have only one listing. So of course, if we create a new listing, let me just put this down for a second, and I'm just gonna create a simple listing here and then reload the dashboard. So we have two now. So we are able to grab this user's listing, and that was quite easy. Now, of course, we want to paginate these listings in case there are so many of them. So instead of using this get method, we can change this to latest. So we will get the newest first, and then we will paginate them. And for now, I'm just going to add one here since we don't have many listings to see the paginations. And with this change, if we go back to our website and reload, this time we get an object that has the data in it, which is our listings, and then the links, which is our pagination. So we did this same process on the homepage, and this is exactly the same. Now let's go back to our dashboard controller. So this is how we can grab the user's listing. But again, we don't want to do this if the user is suspended, and we want to show a message to that user and say, your account is suspended and, for example, contact us. So let's make this into a ternary operator and then send it to the component. So I'm just going to add a line here and set this listing variable to request user role and check if this user's role is not suspended like this, then we will return this user's listing. Otherwise, we will just return null. So here is our ternary operator. We are just checking first if the user is not suspended, and then return the listings, otherwise return null. So at the moment, this user is not suspended, therefore we can see the data. But if we open our database, and I'm signed in as John, so I can change this to suspended. Now going back to the website and reload, you notice we get null. So this is what we want for our user dashboard. So I'm going to close the console, go back to the project, and to the dashboard component. So let's start creating our markup in our template. First, I'm going to delete this console.log and start with a head tag. Let's set a title for this, and I would just say dashboard. Then we have a div here, and the first thing I want to add here is a if statement and see if we have a listings. So our listing prop would be null if the user is suspended, and we want to use that value to show a message to the user and inform them they are suspended. But if it is true, so we have an object there, we can show the listings. So first, let's add that text. I'm going to create another div after this if div and add else directive on this one. And then I'm just going to paste the text here that says your account is suspended and please contact us. So if we take a look at it, here we have our text. And now that's out of the way, let's focus on our table. So this first if is to check if the user is suspended or not. Then we need another if statement or another check to see if we actually have any listings. So again, I'm going to create another div and then another if directive. And this time I just want to check if this object has any values. So I can use the object keys method and pass down our listings.data. So remember, the data array in the listings object is the actual listings that we want to loop over. So if this array length was true, which means we have some data, otherwise we don't. So again, after this VIF, I'm going to create another div with another VElse and say you have no listings like this. So now inside this second div with the VIF statement, I'm just going to add a few lines and start with a heading. So this is going to be a heading above the table, and I will add a div with some classes. I will use flex, item center, justify between, and margin bottom 4. And in here, I want to use our title component. So let's import our title from the components folder. Import title from components and title. And then back to the heading section, let's say title. And I just want to say your latest listings. If we go back to the website, we still see that text because this user is suspended. So let's bring him back by changing the role to general. And back to the website, there we have the title. So let's continue with this. And under that title, I'm going to create another div with flex, items center, and gap 4, and also set the text to extra small. And I just want to add some information in this section. So I will have one p tag that says approved and another one that says pending approval. So here is our text, and then I want to add two icons next to each text. So after this approved text, I can use an I tag and use the font awesome icons. So for the icon classes, I can use FA solid and then circle check. And this is the icon we have here. I just want to change the text to green. So I can say text green 500 and then do the same thing for this other text. So I'm just going to copy this I tag and paste it right after the text and change the icon to circle X mark like this and the color to red. So if we take a look at it, we have these two icons and we are going to use them in the table so the users would know what those icons mean. So we are done with the heading section. Then we want to move down to the table. So I'm going to create a comment and start with a table tag. Then on the table, I'm just going to paste these classes. So we are setting the width to full, table fixed, border collapse, overflow hidden, rounded, medium, text small, and some border or ring in this case, and then different colors if it is dark, background white, and some shadow. Then within the table, we want to start with the table head. And again, I'm going to add some classes. So some background and text extra small, uppercase, and different colors for dark and light mode. Then inside the table head, we will have a table row and then a table head element. So let's add some classes. I will set the width to 3/4. We will say padding 3 and text left. And for the text, I just want to say listing title. So let's create another table head and set the width of this one to 1/4 and padding Y 3, padding right 3. So I don't want any padding to the left and align the text to the right. And for the text, I just want to say view. Then I can copy paste this 2 times. For the second one, I want to say edit. And the last one, I want to say delete. But I want to change the width of edit and delete column. So let's put this to 1/5. So this is our table head and this is what it looks like. Now let's go down. After the table head tag, we want to have our table body. And within the table body, we want to have another table row. Then I'm going to add some classes to the table row. So border bottom, border slate 200, some hover effect, and different colors if it is dark mode. So we have our table row within the table body, and we want to repeat a table row for each listing in our listing object. So let's add the v4 on this table row. And I want to say for each listing in listings.data. Then we want to bind the key attribute to that listing ID. Then within this row, we want to have our data. So let's say TD or table data, and I'm going to add some classes. So set the width and padding and text left. So these classes are going to be the same as the table head classes for each column. So then inside this table data, I will have a div, and again, I want to add some classes. Flex, item center, and gap 2. Now inside this div, I want to show the image, and if the listing has an image, we will show it. Otherwise, we will show the default image. So we can check if the listing image was true. Then, using backticks, go to the storage folder and then listing.image. But if it is not true, so if we don't have an image, we will use our default image. And for me, it's inside the storage, images, listing, and default.jpg. I also want to add some classes to the image tag. So I will put the height and width to 10, fully rounded, and object cover, object center. All right, so back to our website. This is what we have so far. So let's continue. Under the image, I'm going to add another tag for the title. So I will use an h4. And as the content of this h4, I will use the listing.title. But I also want to have an icon here. So let me add an I tag, and we want to use the font awesome icons here, but based on a condition. In this class attribute, I'm going to add backticks so I can have some dynamic value. First, I want to add FA solid and then FA dash. So this is the part that will not change regardless of the icon. And then inside $ curly brackets, I can have my logic. So I want to say if the listing is approved, then circle check and also text green. But if the listing is not approved, I will use circle X mark and text red. So let me format this. And here is the title for our listing. So back to the website, we can see the icon, and this listing is not approved. And that's why we see that red icon. And you notice we only have one here, even though this user has two. That's because I set the paginate to 1. So let me put this to 2 or something else, so we can see both listings. And there we go. So this one is approved, this one is not. Now let's continue with the other parts. Back to the dashboard component. And then we want to move down to the next table data. So that was the first part for the title. And then we want to have another table data with some classes. I will set the width to 1/4, like the heading, padding Y 3 and padding right 3, text right, and some color for the text. And in here, we will have a link to the detailed page for each listing. As the content of this link, I would just say view, and we want to bind the href to the route function and then listing.show, which is looking for a listing ID. So as a second argument, we want to pass down listing.id. All right, so back to the website, you notice we have the links, and if I click on this, we will go to the detailed page. But if I click on this one, which is disapproved, then we get unauthorized. And we get this because of the policy we applied in the previous video. So we don't want to show this link if the listing is not approved. So let's make this link conditional. So again, we can use the VF directive and check if the listing is approved. And this is our view link. Back to the website, we cannot see the button, of course. Let's move on to the next table data. And we can copy this whole table data we just created for view and paste it under that. This is going to be for the edit page. Now for this one, we just want to change the width, and we don't need a VIF, so let's get rid of that part. For the href of this link, we want to go to listing.edit, and we still want to pass down the listing ID. And for the text, we just want to say edit or update. So we have our links here. Again, we can go to the edit page of each listing. And the last column is going to be the delete button. So again, let's copy this table data and paste it under that. And everything is going to be the same except the text. So we will set the text to red. And instead of a link, I want to have a button. So let's just change this to a button. I will set the type to button. For the text, I want to say delete. And here is our button. So when we click on this, we want to perform an action. So let's use @click on the button, and we want to say delete a listing. And let's create this function in the script tag so we don't get any errors. So I can say const delete listing, and I will set this to an arrow function. And let's just return a confirm and say, are you sure? So back to the website, let's give it a reload. We have our listings. We can go to the edit, we can go to the view page, and if it is disapproved, we don't see that link, we can of course delete a listing as well. So the next step is to actually delete a listing and also add our pagination links down here. So let's start with pagination, and we want to import our pagination links from our components folder. So we want to place that pagination links component inside this second container where we check if we have any data. What I'm going to do here, add another div inside this container. So I can select everything from the heading all the way down to the table closing tag. I will cut everything. I will add a div, and let's add margin bottom 6 to it too. And then inside this div, I can paste the whole thing. So now we have our table inside a div, and after this closing div tag, we want to use our pagination link. So let's use our component and self-close it, and this is looking for a paginator. And we can simply pass down our listings. So again, make sure the pagination is inside the div before this VLs statement. So back to the website, we can see our paginations. And if I go back to the dashboard controller and change this number to 1, so we can have a couple of pages, there we go. So I can go to page 2, page 1, and everything is working properly. Now let's go back to the dashboard component and handle this delete request. So we've already done this in our detail page, and we want to submit a request to our destroy route. So let's wrap this with another set of parentheses, change this return statement to if, and then add the curly brackets. And within the body of this if statement, we want to use the router from Inertia view 3. Then we want to use the delete request or delete function, and then use our destroy route. So we can use route listing.destroy, which is looking for an ID. Now we can't pass the ID in the script tag. So what we can do is just accept the parameter here, and I will call it ID and then pass it down here. So our delete listing function is now expecting an ID. And if I go back to the delete button in the template, right here, I can simply add listing.id as an argument to this function. All right, so let's give it a reload and go to page 1. I'm going to delete this one, which is disapproved. And okay, there we go. It's deleted and we have only one. And the last thing I want to add is the session messages. So remember in our listing controller, if I open it for a second, after each action, we returned to the dashboard with a status message. So we have for create, update, and delete. And we just want to show those messages somewhere on this dashboard page. So in the script tag, again, I can copy one of these import statements and import our session messages. And then maybe above the table, I will use that session messages, which is looking for a status message. So we need to send that session message to this component as a prop from our dashboard controller. So let's do this. In our dashboard controller, after this listings prop, we want to add another prop. I will call it a status. And the value of this is going to be from session function with the key status. And this is our status prop. Let's go back to the dashboard, accept this in our define props macro, and it's going to be type string. And then we just want to pass it down here. And that's all we have to do. So let's test everything. And I want to turn this paginate number back to maybe 10. Now let's go back to the website. And at the moment we have only one post. Let's create one first. So I will just add some random text and press create. We go back to the dashboard and you notice this session message up here. And if I go to edit and update this, maybe also add an image, update, there we go. We have the image, we have the updated text, we have the session messages, and I can also delete this. So press OK, the listing deleted successfully. So everything is working for our dashboard component. Now let me create one more post and talk about something else that you might or might not want to include it in your application. So you notice I just created the post and this is disapproved at first. And this is what we decided for our application. But let's approve this manually. So in my database, I can just turn this 0 to 1 in the listings table. And if we reload, then it is approved. So imagine you're the admin of this application and you checked this listing and everything was okay, so you approved it. Now, I can go update it and, for example, turn this to something else like bad listing and update. And now my listing is approved, but with some new information that could be against our terms and conditions. So this is again your choice and how you would deal with the updated listings. But I think an easy approach is to make the listing disapproved again if a user update their listing. And this can be very easy to fix. So let's go back to our project and open listing controller first. So we know our update method in the listing controller is in charge of updating that listing. And at the moment, we are just checking for the properties we have on the form and then submit it to our database. So right here in the update method, this method is expecting an array, right? And we want to use all this information we have up here plus another one, which is the approved property. So what I want to do here, I will wrap this with brackets and then use 3 dots to spread the fields. And then I will add a comma and grab the approved property and set this to false. So I'm just adding another property to this array we have up here and setting the approved value of a listing to false. So let's see if this works. So we have this bad listing which is approved. And of course, if we go to the home page, we can see that. So let's go back to the dashboard. And if I go to update this, and I just want to add updated, press update, then we go back to the dashboard, but the listing becomes disapproved. So of course, in our home page, it's gone. So I think this is a better approach. And again, you can decide if you want to follow this step or not, but I will leave it like this. So the only thing we changed in our listing controller was to adding this property to the update method. And that's all about this video and the user dashboard. In the next video, we will start working on the admin dashboard and abilities.